Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. The story begins with a group of teenagers stargazing in the city of Richmond. One of them is Leo Biederman, who is with his friend, Sarah. They disagree about a bright point in the sky, as Leo believes it's not a star. The astronomy club instructor suggests it might be a satellite and encourages Leo to send a photo to astronomer Marcus Wolf. When the scientist receives the image, his computer also fails to identify the celestial body but indicates that it is moving rapidly. Curious, Wolf decides to calculate the trajectory and nearly falls from his chair when the results appear. He hurriedly gathers information and puts everything in an envelope before rushing out. In his car, he tries to call someone from the Planetary Sciences Department, anxious to communicate his discovery. A huge truck is coming down the same road, and the driver is distracted at the wrong moment. Neither of them can swerve in time. Wolf's car rolls off the road, falls off the cliff, and explodes. A year later, in Washington, journalist Jenny Lerner is frustrated by her lack of career advancement. Despite her investigative talent, she realizes she is only given menial tasks. Her boss, Beth, explains that this is the normal course of the profession and tells Jenny she just needs to be patient. Besides her job discouragement, Jenny is also dealing with family issues. Her father is marrying a much younger woman, and her mother is not very happy about it. Jenny laments the situation but doesn't have time to comfort her mother. The report Beth has requested this time is gossip about Treasury Secretary Alan Rittenhouse, who is resigning to take care of his sick wife. However, his assistant tells Jenny that Rittenhouse had a mistress and is just trying to avoid a scandal. He installed a phone that no one else could use, and he always closed the door before answering. The only thing the assistant managed to hear was the name of the woman, Ellie. In a disgusted tone, she mentions that Rittenhouse spoke about his mistress even to the president. Since Jenny needs more details to confirm the gossip, she decides to go to the secretary's house to question these allegations. Upon arriving, she is surprised to see the family moving. Rittenhouse's daughter repeats the official version and says her mother is sick. Jenny tries to probe the girl and find out where they are going, but Rittenhouse himself soon appears, furious about her intrusion. Before he can throw her out, Jenny takes a risky gamble. She says she already knows everything about Ellie and claims she is ready to spread the story. Rittenhouse is distraught upon hearing this and orders the cameraman to stop filming immediately. Sarcastically, he congratulates Jenny for having the biggest scoop in journalism history and claims he only resigned to be with his family during this difficult time. It becomes clear that they are not talking about the same thing, but Jenny cannot backtrack and admit that she knows almost nothing. On her way back, the car behind her suddenly hits her rear, and the car in front slows down, leaving Jenny trapped between the two. When the third car hits her side, she realizes the situation is serious. Forced to follow the car in front to a traffic block, Jenny is then detained by the FBI. A man named Morton Entrican receives the reporter with indignation and disdain, as if she were a great traitor to her country. Despite her fear, Jenny understands that she has stumbled upon a much larger secret than she thought and decides to keep up the bluff, pretending to be in the know. The charade becomes even more complicated when President Tom Beck appears to speak with her personally. However, Jenny resists the intimidation and soon realizes her advantage must be enormous, as the president is willing to negotiate with her. Without mentioning what the secret is, he admits that the White House will not be able to hold on to it for much longer, as they will have to explain the huge expenditures sooner or later. But he still wants it to be him who communicates the facts to the nation, and not a sensationalist report. Asking Jenny to hold the story for 2 more days, he says he will make an official statement about it and offers her a prominent position at the press conference in exchange for her silence until then. Jenny then begins to negotiate the deal as if she actually had something to publish before that, even demanding that the first question be hers. Besides coming out ahead, she gains another trump card when the president spells out the word Ellie instead of pronouncing it normally. This reveals the whole misunderstanding of the gossip, as the word is just an acronym that ended up being confused with a woman's name. Arriving at the network, Jenny begins to research the acronym, and what she finds is not very comforting. The term extinction level event is used to describe global catastrophes capable of causing the extinction of an entire species. Jenny is very shaken but does her best to disguise it and says nothing to Beth. That night, she meets her father, Jason, who is still upset because she didn't attend his wedding. Next to him is his new wife, Chloe. Jenny can't explain her terrible mood without revealing her apocalyptic suspicions and ends up being rude to them both. She tells her stepmother to her face that her mother is alone in the world and Jason should leave Chloe to go back to her. When the girl retorts that a divorce isn't the end of the world, Jenny can't help but laugh. 2 days later, the big press conference arrives. Beth is shocked to see Jenny there, especially with the VIP treatment she is receiving. Then the president arrives and informs the nation that a comet the size of Everest is heading toward Earth. The collision is set to happen in 1 year, on August 16th. As part of the defense strategy, the Americans have partnered with Russia and are finishing the construction of the largest spacecraft ever created. Named Messiah, the ship is being built in Earth's orbit and will launch in 2 months, carrying nuclear devices that, if they do not destroy the comet, will at least alter its deadly trajectory. Beck then introduces the group of heroes tasked with saving the planet. The captain is young Oren Monash, the main pilot is Andrea Baker, and the doctor is Gus Partenza. The only Russian on the crew is physicist Mikhail Tulchinsky. The last two are Mark Simon, who is a navigation specialist, and Spurgeon Tanner, who was the last person to walk on the moon. He will be responsible for landing the Messiah on the comet's surface. As promised, Beck allows Jenny to ask the first question at the conference. At the network, all her colleagues are awestruck to see her on television speaking with the president. She asks why the White House hid this information for so long, and Beck states that he only wanted to disclose the troubling news when a solution was already in place. But then she mentions Secretary Rittenhouse's resignation. He stopped working to be with his family, which shows that not everyone in the government is so confident in the proposed solution. A bit irritated, the president refutes this information and reiterates that the secretary has a sick wife. Beck assures that the human race will overcome this obstacle. Responding to the next question, he says that the comet's name is Wolf Biedermann. This is a tribute to the scientists who made the discovery nearly a year ago. Beck states that unfortunately, both died in a tragic car accident on the way out of the observatory. We know that this last part is incorrect. In fact, Leo Biedermann's family is watching the speech at home, and the entire neighborhood is at the door to see the celebrity. The confusion is clarified in the days following the address, and Leo himself has the chance to tell the story. It was Marcus Wolf who named the comet, generously including the boy. And when the White House found his documents, no one imagined that the second name belonged to a high school student. The astronauts also take advantage of their sudden fame in the following weeks. It is then that a friction between the generations begins to arise, as Tanner is much older than his colleagues. Despite being the only one who has really been to space, he is viewed by the rest of the crew as an outdated astronaut. Conversely, Tanner has little faith in the training of the youngsters, done entirely through simulations. Finally, the big day arrives, and the astronauts board the Messiah. Beth doesn't even look Jenny in the face when she hears that Jenny has just been promoted to anchor. Their boss still says this could have happened much earlier if Jenny had worked more with this type of material, not knowing it was Beth who was holding her back. As the ship approaches Wolf Biedermann, the astronauts are astonished by the comet's size. Now is Tanner's time to shine, piloting the spacecraft through the hail of ice, rocks, and sand that forms the comet's tail. Some of the rocks are the size of houses and scrape past them at high speed. The whole world is watching, but the signal soon drops, and Jenny must narrate the journey without the video footage. We see that the upper part of the ship is hit by one of the rocks, but even so, Tanner manages to guide the Messiah with great precision and safely descend to the comet's surface. Mark, Mikhail, Gus, and Oren exit the ship to set the explosives at specific points. In the news report, Jenny explains that the mission must be completed before sunlight hits the comet, as this will trigger gas explosions across its surface. She also says that the bombs are attached to a drilling device that goes down to a depth of 100 meters. With less than 2 hours left until dawn, Andrea and Tanner realize that the others are taking too long. One of the devices got stuck before reaching the necessary depth, and Captain Oren decides to go down there to clear the way. The operation is complicated, and time is running out. Andrea warns that the guys need to return now, or the ship will have to take off without them. But Tanner decides to do the opposite and take the ship to where they are, despite Andrea's warning about the fuel consumption. Meanwhile, Oren is bravely kicking the device carrying a nuclear bomb until it starts working again. There are only a few seconds left now, and the four hurry back to the ship. The gas explosions are starting to occur as the sun advances across the surface. Oren forgets to lower his visor in time and suffers very serious burns. Then, Gus Partenza is struck by one of the gas explosions and is thrown far away. The other three return to the Messiah, and Mikhail lashes out at Tanner for refusing to rescue the doctor, but the pilot asserts that this would kill everyone, as there isn't enough fuel for such a long detour. On Earth, Jenny informs viewers about the tragic incident and explains that since the captain is seriously injured, Tanner is now in command. She also warns that the explosion will be broadcast on TV with a 20-second delay and that the screen will go completely dark in the first moments after the detonation. Once the Messiah reaches a safe distance, Tanner begins the countdown and detonates all the bombs. As the whole world holds its breath in suspense with the empty screen, the impact of the explosion hits the Messiah harder than expected, and communication is cut off. In the White House, the president begins a live broadcast to communicate the bad news. The explosion only managed to break the comet into two parts, and both are still moving toward Earth. Furthermore, Houston has lost contact with the Messiah, and the situation of the astronauts is unknown. However, Beck also states that not everything is lost. His plan B is to launch a series of missiles at the comet as soon as it is close enough. Knowing that this can only be done when it is too late for a plan C, Beck reveals his final card up his sleeve. In secret, the government has built a massive cave system in Missouri capable of sheltering 1 million Americans for 2 years until the atmosphere returns to normal. 200,000 people have already been chosen among outstanding professionals in each area of knowledge. The rest will be drawn by a computer a week before the catastrophe. To avoid chaos in the streets, the president declares a state of emergency across the country effective immediately and warns that the armed forces are ready to handle any disobedience. After the president's declaration, the network receives details about the selection of the Ark's inhabitants, which is the nickname for the underground shelter. People who have been pre-selected will be notified in a few minutes, and others must wait for the lottery on August 10th. Jenny's voice begins to falter as she states that the drawing will not include anyone over 50. Her mother is 61, and we see her watching the news at that moment. The phone rings at Leo Biederman's house, and his mother gets emotional upon hearing that the family already has a guaranteed spot in the Arkansas. Hearing this, Sarah's father decides to go home, hoping to receive the same notification. Jenny is also selected for a spot, as the American population will need the support of a familiar face. However, her invitation is individual, and there is nothing she can do for her mother. In Richmond, Leo decides to propose to Sarah to include her in the list of the lucky ones as part of his family. He says he consulted the authorities, and her parents will also be saved. In the following weeks, disorder spreads across the planet, as a large part of the population has nothing left to lose. As Leo and Sarah hastily get married, the Messiah continues its journey home, still without communication. Oren Monash has lost his sight, and Tanner makes a point of reading a book to him. We see that the friction between them has dissolved, and now Tanner is a beloved leader among the crew. In the early hours of August 9th, the military begins transporting the future inhabitants of the Arkansas. Sarah is allowed to board with her marriage certificate, but her family is turned away. The soldier ignores Leo's protests, who swears he confirmed all the names with the White House. Sarah refuses to go to the Ark without her parents and ends up being left behind while her husband boards the bus. At the network, Jenny receives the horrible news that her mother has taken her own life. She is devastated and unleashes her anger on her father when they meet shortly after. Jason says Chloe left him and he feels alone, but Jenny refuses to comfort him. At the Ark's entrance, we see that the shelter lives up to its name, as various species of animals are also being accommodated. Outside the gates, there are crowds begging for a chance or simply expressing their outrage. The Biedermans are waiting in line when Leo decides he will not enter. His mother tries to force him, but his father understands that he is determined. The family bids farewell with a broken heart, and the boy hitches a ride back to Richmond. Jason visits his daughter at work before leaving the city and gives her some old photos to prove they were happy once. Jenny is not moved but keeps the photos. Now there are only a few hours left until the end of the world. In yet another painful address, the president announces that the missiles have failed, and both comets are still on a collision course with Earth. In 12 hours, the first comet will hit the Atlantic, causing a tsunami that will engulf the entire east coast of the United States, destroying including the cities of Atlanta and New York. The second impact will come 3 hours later, in western Canada, and will be much worse. The dust will darken the sky for 2 years, killing all living things on the surface within months. This time, Beck no longer has any secret plans to reveal, and ends his speech by wishing everyone good luck. What no one knows yet is that the Messiah crew has not given up on saving the world. Tanner has discovered a massive fissure right in the middle of the larger comet, through which the astronauts could insert the remaining bombs. When Mikhail asks how they will get out of there afterward, Oren replies that this is a one-way mission. In Houston, the controller can't believe when he hears Tanner's voice. The astronauts need a password to arm the nuclear devices. Tanner doesn't explain what they're going to do, but for the first time in history, the nuclear codes are released without any problems. Meanwhile, Jenny awaits transport to the Ark as the staff draws sticks. 6 of them will be able to hitch a ride on a helicopter to the mountains, escaping at least from the tsunami. Beth and her young daughter end up being left out. Arriving breathless in Richmond, and finding his wife gone, Leo steals his father-in-law's motorcycle to look for Sarah. The roads leading inland are a complete image of chaos, completely jammed from start to finish. When the helicopter arrives at the network, Beth still hasn't moved. Visibly distraught, she says that her daughter likes to stay there and that perhaps the wave won't reach the 15th floor. Then Jenny grabs the girl, knowing her mother will come after her. In the helicopter, she returns the child and lets Beth take her place, not only on the helicopter but also in the Arkansas holding her childhood photos. She stands alone on the roof and watches her last chance for survival fly away. Sarah and Leo finally meet amidst the congestion. Her parents immediately force the young couple to take the baby to the mountains. Crying heavily, Sarah tells her parents she will see them soon and makes a great effort to believe it. Jenny finds her father alone at the beach house where those photos were taken. She is still very hurt, but if there is a moment to abandon the resentment, it can only be now. On the road, everyone gets out of their cars to watch the fireball cross the sky. The comet strikes the ocean with tremendous force, raising true walls of water around it. On the beach, the sea begins to recede, and the gigantic wave covers the horizon. Jenny spends her last moments embracing her father. Minutes later, the Statue of Liberty is torn from the ground by the force of the water. The streets of New York are engulfed by the tsunami, and the same happens in several other cities. The wave soon reaches the congested road where Sarah's parents are, who also decide to accept their fate. In Houston, the astronauts' families arrive at NASA to say goodbye. The supervisor apologizes to Tanner, as it was not possible to locate his 2 children. The pilot does not get upset and says he is about to reunite with his wife on the other side. Oren's wife brings their newborn son to meet his father. Mark narrates the video for him, who cannot see the baby. The countdown begins, and Andrea tells Tanner it was an honor working with him. The spacecraft then dives into the abyss, into the comet. The explosion is a success, shattering the comet into thousands of small harmless pieces. From Earth, what would have been the end of the human species is now a fireworks show. Sarah and Leo manage to get the baby to the mountains and watch the spectacle together. Tom Beck's next address takes place in front of the ruins of the Capitol, after all the water has receded. He states that millions of lives have been lost across several continents, but the only way to honor their memory is to restart.